Now it's time for another Board Game Brawl preview with Nick Meanahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com.
Hey peoples, today we're going to take a look at a game that will be seeking funding on Kickstarter very soon. That game is called Land of Zion and it's from Sky Kingdom Games. Now, when the project launches, if you like what you see throughout the rest of this preview video, there will be a link up in the top corner of your screen as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Again, when it launches, you can go to the page, find out more information than I could possibly tell you here, and hopefully you'll consider backing the project. Now, Land of Zion is a competitive game primarily for 2 players, but you can play it in teams of 2, where you are fielding a team of fantasy-styled warriors competing and fighting against another team, or in the case of teams of players, each player will have control of a couple of characters, and then you both mega teams fight against each other. And the story of Land of Zion is that there, in this fantasy world, there was this giant cataclysm that sort of ruined much of the world for quite some time, split the world up into different countries, warring countries. But now, in the present timeline, so to speak, there is hope again on the horizon. Warriors are looking for the sacred floating island, hence the name of the publishing company, Sky Kingdom Games. Now, one thing I want to note here, it's very important, is that this game was actually already on Kickstarter, and it was actually, they chose to take it down because, very early on, because they wanted to reformat it based on the backer feedback, in the sense that the original Land of Zion game was going to be collectible, in a sense, because you would be buying packs that have randomized heroes that you would use in the game and other types of cards as well. Based on backer feedback, they decided that they wanted to go in the expandable card game route, meaning that you would be buying expansion packs to flesh out the base game. You'll have the base game, and then you buy packs to flesh it out, but you'll know what you're getting. There's no randomness, there's no hunting down rares or aftermarket for cards, things like that. So they decided that was the better way to go, and so when the project relaunches, that's what you're going to see. So let me go ahead and show you a brief look at how the game plays with a prototype version of the game. And so I should say as well that even though this is based on the game as it is now, still, because it doesn't have any impact, the whole thing with the collectible versus expandable doesn't have any kind of impact on the core gameplay that you're going to see here. However, it is still a prototype version, so component-wise, what you see here may change in the final version, especially throughout the Kickstarter if things are unlocked, so on and so forth. So let's take a look, then we're going to come back, we'll discuss it further.
Land of Zion is a competitive game primarily for 2 players, although you can play 2 against 2. The goal of the game is to eliminate each of your opponent's units by dropping them down to 0 hit points, which is considered incapacitated. Each player starts by selecting their units. Each unit has a star rating, and you will decide ahead of time how many stars your troop is limited to and how many characters it can consist of. In a standard game, it would be 3 characters, with a total of up to 5 stars among them. Characters fall into different classes, with different strengths and weaknesses depending on their stats. Every character has a unit card that is placed along the edge of one side of the main board. Players will place out their troops along this edge based on who randomly gets to go first. A second ability card associated with each character is laid in front of you. One side of each card lists the offensive capabilities of the character, while the other side lists defensive and support abilities. Each set of abilities is associated with a different speaking stone element. Furthermore, you need a spec sheet for your units. This is where you'll make a note of the stats for each of your characters. Characters have hit points, weapon defense, spirit defense, attack, critical rating, movement, and range. A shuffled stack of 140 resource cards constitute the Speaking Stone deck. Each resource is associated with an element and can be used to activate abilities for your characters. The number of stars indicates how many resources that card counts for, going all the way up to infinite. Lastly, regarding components, there are several stacks of status effect tokens that will be placed on characters due to enemy abilities, such as Sleep, Poison, and Blind. In a standard 3-character per player game, each player starts with 7 cards from the Speaking Stone deck, which they will draw at the start of their first turn. Decide who goes first. That player will then activate each of her characters, fully resolving their actions before moving on to the next one. Each character can perform 2 actions, in any order of their choosing: moving, and attack or ability. Movement is simple. Look at the character's movement stat, and that's how many orthogonal spaces they can move. You can move through allies, but you can't stop on their spaces. You can't save any of your movement points for later. Then that character may either perform a standard attack or use an ability. If you decide to attack, you'll first need to check the range on the attack by counting spaces as if you were moving between yourself and your opponent. No resources need to be spent for a standard attack. Simply roll 2 dice. If the rolled number is equal to or less than the character's crit score, you'll deal your attack value in damage times 2. Otherwise, it's just the attack value. There are several types of damage that different classes inflict, including physical, spirit, and hit point damage. You may be able to evade or negate damage of particular types from your opponent if you have the right ability. This will involve rolling the dice and hoping to roll a number under the target number of the ability. This can also help you to avoid specific status effects. Lastly, characters have weapon defense and spirit defense ratings. These ratings are subtracted from the applicable damage before it's dealt to the character. If hit point damage is dealt, however, it will lower your defense from there on out. If your hit point hits 0, the character is incapacitated. Instead of making an attack, you can instead use an ability. You must reveal resource cards as needed by the ability before using it. This counts as an action and ends that character's attack phase. Alternatively, you can fuse an ability. These are passive abilities that are always in effect after you commit the appropriate resource cards to the character. However, these cards still count against your hand total of 7. Using a fusion ability does not count as your attack/ability for the turn. At the end of the turn, decide which fuses to keep or break, discard all of your cards, and then redraw back to 7. Then, the next player takes their turn. The game ends when one player's team is completely incapacitated.
So that's just a brief overview of the game. I do want to note that even though in my overview I sort of covered it from the perspective of you were doing either a 2-player or a standard 2-player team, 2 teams game, with the final version of the game there will be rules for constructed play, draft rules, so the types of things that you do see in collectible card games, but again, without the burden of it being collectible, so that's important to note. One important thing as well is that this game is really simple to get into. And that's not to say that it is a simple game as a pejorative. There is complex and meaningful decisions in the game, but actually learning the game, setting it up, getting it up and running, even teaching it to brand new people who maybe aren't even familiar with this type of game at all is all very, very simple. It's very fast and quick to get it up and running and to play the game as well. Matches really don't take very long. I think a standard match takes around 40 minutes, and that's, again, if you're just doing a full standard match. You might even consider doing sort of a tutorial type match, and again, just really quickly to get it under, to get someone under their feet and get them up and running. The theme of the game obviously helps quite a lot. You have this it's dark fantasy, but it's not overwhelmingly dark. It's certainly suitable for all ages. It has a very excellent artwork and art style that I find myself at times getting fatigued by fantasy artwork because so much of it looks very cookie cutter, very similar, even though it's technically high quality. But I found the artwork in Land of Zion to have a very original aesthetic and feel to it, while at the same time having the type of fantasy things that you've seen in other games just from a different perspective. There's a lot of variety in the game. There's so many different types of abilities, both offensive and defensive, on all the different warriors that you choose to fight as. And there's, again, even just with the base game, you have a lot of different characters that you can choose from to play as. The game has just a lot of different ways to customize your playstyle, what you want to focus on, how you want to go about winning, while again, it keeps it simple because your goal is to take out the enemy team. It doesn't overburden it with too many different things to worry about, while still having those meaningful decisions. The component quality, even in the prototype version, is high, and I expect that to translate over into the final version, perhaps even more so at that time. So when you mix all these different things together, it's a very accessible game, but at the same time having a lot of meat to chew on, so to speak, for players who are more hardcore gamers, the people who would play a lot of different types of games of varying different rule sets. And I think that those appeal to those types of players, as well as people who just like head-to-head competitive card games with lots of meaningful things to going into it as well. And with the news that it will be expandable in the future, that's certainly going to help a lot of people, especially with their budget, so on and so forth, making it even more accessible. There's that word again. So if you are interested in Land of Zion, again, it's going to relaunch on Kickstarter very soon. If it's already relaunched, I will have links in the top corner of your screen, as well as down in the description section underneath this video. Trust me, the page will have way more information than I could possibly possibly tell you here. This was just to give you a taste of what the game is like. So go there, find out more, and hopefully consider backing the project. That is Land of Zion from Sky Kingdom Games. Thank you so much for watching and for supporting our sponsors. Take care.
Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.